I try to live my life in this fearless way, and it's been a mantra for myself for years now. Being courageous, being fearless, facing everything. And for years, I didn't talk about my diagnosis openly. I had a really ugly experience in the workplace when I shared what I was going through. My workplace was not as warm as yours. It was actually very toxic and created a lot of trauma for me. I was struggling a lot. I learned to just bury it all. Like, you look normal, so act normal.
Mm. Welcome to Black Cancer. I'm your host, Jodi-Ann. Today's guest is Juliette Austin, a Haitian American New Yorker who works in corporate diversity. Juliette says she is counting her blessings and staying focused on positively impacting her community. She's also a thyroid cancer survivor. I've known Juliette much longer than knowing she had once had thyroid cancer. She and I met professionally, and our friendship has truly grown from there. In this episode, Juliette and I share some pretty tender conversations about why she withheld this part of herself from me for so long. As you might have guessed from what you just heard at the top of this episode, it has a big part to do with the toxic, likely illegal way Juliette was treated when she disclosed her diagnosis at work nearly a decade ago. We talk about wrestling with internalized ableism, finding new ways to trust ourselves, and figuring out what we need to let go of to heal. We start today's episode with a new life update from Juliette. Before logging into our call, Juliette had just left her new thyroid cancer support group meeting. Here's my conversation with Juliette. You'll hear Juliette's voice first.
Girl, I'm making changes. I'm doing things differently. Yes.
How was that?
It was good. Well, when I say good, it's good. It was a good reminder that I'm not alone in this space. And like the first time I joined that call, I had this oh shit moment of like everybody's describing exactly the things that I've been feeling for the last 8 years. And then you can fit, and this sounds terrible, but you can see how every person is suffering in some way, or like some person is manifesting, or showing some symptom. You had one woman who could barely say her name because her brain fog was so heavy and she was so tired. And then another person who's physically in pain. Another person is like experiencing depression, or something like. And it was. I'm like, I know all of this. I see. Like, I'm like all of these people rolled up into one.
Yeah. Oh my God. I felt that way when I was very briefly in a spinal cord injury group, and I had never met other people who had spinal cord injuries. Like the group was super diverse, right? There was maybe one or two people that were complete quadriplegics. And then there were a bunch of folks who had some mobility, spent some time in a wheelchair, spent some time, on a cane. I think I was the most mobile in the group. But even though our manifestations of our spinal cord injuries were so different, I still saw myself in everyone in some way. And there was this unlocking of, oh my God, this is my people, but like in a different way, particularly as Black women, that we understand our people, quote unquote.
Right,
Right.
right. Exactly what it felt like. It was like, oh, okay, this is my this is a tribe that I didn't know I had before.
Yeah. I'm glad you even found it. Like, what made you look for it?
Well, interestingly enough, I always knew about it. Um,
Ooh.
I always knew about it. I was in their online chat group. Like early on, I would be plugged into it, but I never really interacted with anybody. And then at some point, it was too much for me, and I checked out of it altogether. But I never like deleted it or anything like that. I knew it was always there. I think emotionally, I just couldn't handle. being in the group at that point in time.
Damn. So how long did you know about it until you're like, all right, I'm going to engage?
Yeah, it was last month. I decided to engage, and that is a lot. It stems a lot from our conversations.
Yeah.
And me facing, like, what's my edge here in my growth and evolution? What's that fear? What are the things that I'm not facing and talking about and experiencing and being courageous about, right? That was one of them. And I'm like, I have access to this. I know it's there. And when you shared your experience about the group that you participated in, I was like, all right. I honestly, I didn't want to join it. I did not want to go. And I was so afraid to get on that call. But I did, and I'm the only Black woman there. Well, at that time there was another Black woman there, but she wasn't on today. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I'm in a better place emotionally to deal with it, and it turned out that there was something I could offer.
Ooh.
In help, in support of others too, and so that also felt good as well.
I hope you stay in this group as long as it serves you, but sometimes I'm kicking myself like, man, I should have stayed in the spinal cord injury group. But that was happening around the time that George Floyd was murdered, and it's like racial uprising was happening, and I couldn't stand being in the group. I emailed the head of the study, and I was just like, this is a national study. Spinal cord injuries aren't like special things, right? Most people get spinal cord injuries just from driving or like having some type of acute trauma in some way. And so it should at least match population data in terms of representation, right? If it's like can be a random occurrence in that way. And so why am I the only Black person in this group? And then they're asking me if I know anyone. Why do you think I'm in this group? I don't know people with spinal cord injury.
It's like, yeah, let me bring all my Black spinal cord injury friends with me. Like where do you think?
Oh my God, I was like, why do you think I showed up? And if you're not, and it just like re-triggered me around like COVID and Fauci and Rep. Presley and Elizabeth Warren advocating for race data around what was going on with COVID-19. And it's like, if that wasn't part of your analysis at the outset, like right in the beginning, what are you doing?
Right. And it wasn't part of their analysis at the outset because race, well, we're going down a rabbit hole.
I know.
With that one, I was like, we could break the whole, systemic and all of that around COVID and why it's not part of the conversation or their studies to begin with. Incidentally, I struggled out of my last role, what I would see as really well-intentioned people thinking that they're doing really great things and not realizing that we're not all the same. And that's hard for people to grasp that we are not all the same.
But here's one thing I want to challenge though. At this day and age, with this much information access, with this much history around race and the healthcare system, can you be well-intentioned?
That's a great point.
Like, can you be well-intentioned? You are at the highest level of your industry. You are talking about health at a population level.
Great question. And and you're right. You're absolutely right, because I use the word well-intentioned and it's giving way too much credit. We have to start the conversation where it's not, oh, I didn't know. It's, why didn't you care enough to know?
Thank you. You have every opportunity to know. And every time you get on your Instagram and you just scrolling nonsense, is you making an active decision not to know. Because you could spend that 15, 20 minutes trying to find out what's up. We didn't even start the podcast. All of this is recording, but
jumped right in.
We just like.
But you know what? What I love is that's how you and I roll.
I know.
it could be like 2 weeks since we've spoken to each other. We jump right back in, and and we have a good flow. I appreciate that. We just jump right into the conversation.
I think that's important too, for people to understand that your life and cancer, it's connected, right? So there's no, okay, let me go over here. Now I'm going to be a thyroid cancer patient survivor. All right, let me step over here. Now I'm going to be a Black person, or now I'm going to be a friend. Like, all of these mix and intermingle. And so I think, like, at least when I talk to people who don't have experiences with cancer, it's very hard for them to enter into a cancer conversation, because they get real solemn and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I actually had this conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who didn't know up until yesterday that he's a fairly new friend. Like, I was having a flare up and I couldn't sleep, and we just happened to get on the call together. And of course he's asking me what's wrong, what's going on, blah, blah. And I'm like, shit, I don't wanna go through this right now. Like, I don't want to explain it. I can't. He won't understand. And in my head, I'm like, I know he's not going to understand. I don't want to have to explain it. I'm already feeling like shit. It's going to feel like shit to talk about this right now. And because I already know what's going to happen. And he challenged me, and he was like, listen, if we're friends, we're going to talk about this, and so fine, I just kind of leaned into it, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm a thyroid cancer survivor. I was diagnosed 8 years ago. I'm just having like a moment right now and this is just how my body, and I'm talking to him, and we're on FaceTime, and you could just see his face, just like his eyes bulged out of his head.
Yeah.
He was just like, his eyes got big. He got like, the mood totally changed. And he was like in shock. He's like, whoa, I did not expect you to tell me this. That's a lot. And in my head, I'm like, I believe it's a lot, you think,
You think, welcome to my life.
And I know he was trying to be supportive in like encouraging me. It's like, hey, you're gonna be okay, you're fine, like all of this stuff.
Platitudes start coming in.
And then he said, and I'm gonna get emotional now because it just really hit me. And he said, yeah, well, you're not missing an arm, you're not missing a leg. You're still breathing. And so, yeah, you're fine, kind of a thing. And that was just like a punch in my face. And because I knew it was coming, and I was praying it would, and that's why I didn't want to have that conversation. And that's why it's so hard for me to have this conversation. And that's part of the reason why I never did talk about it for so long. Because I don't want to get into this space of, oh, how bad could it possibly be? You look fine. You got both your legs, you got both your arms, you're walking, you're talking. And so you must be fine. Like, hey, you're living. Just be happy with that, and that just sucked. That just really sucked. But I paused him real quick, and I was like, I am not going to accept this. And let me explain something to you. And I went down, I broke it down even further. So now I'm deep in this conversation. Now I'm invested into this conversation even more. And so I spent a good amount of time explaining to him exactly what it meant to have thyroid cancer, and how doctors are really great at treating thyroid cancer. Like, they're great at giving you radiation or cutting it out and all this other BS, but they don't know how to give you quality of life after.
And quality of life in the way that you define it.
Yes. They don't know how to treat that. And so, yeah, I might be living and breathing and, have all my limbs. And I said to him, I said, I was like, this is where I'm at. I would rather give up my right arm If somebody told me you have an option of, like, if we can give you your thyroid back, but you have to give up your right arm, I would give up my right arm without even questioning it. And that's when he fell out. He was like, whoa, that's serious. Like, you would actually sacrifice the limb? I'm like, yeah, so in other words, what you just said is so, like, you don't understand what it means. Like, I would give that up just to have my thyroid back. To the hell with the limb.
Yep.
My thyroid is more important right now than my freaking right arm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway.
No,
Yeah.
this hits me so hard because I had the same experience, right? Listen, Jodi-Ann, spinal cord injury, you could have been a quadriplegic, but you're walking around, you can do this, you can do that. Like, it's okay. Same thing. And especially when you're in a moment of vulnerability, when you are trying to explain something to somebody that you already know that they're not going to be able to understand. And the first thing that comes out of their mouths erases you, completely invalidates the thing that you have to struggle with every single moment of every single day. They're just like, it's fine. That you shouldn't be bothered with that. And I think that's something that I came to a realization too. So when I was facing my situation, I just remember before my surgery, I'd just be crying. Like, I just want a chance. I just want a chance. I just want to wake up from surgery and be able to move. I'll put in the work. I'll learn how to walk. I'll learn how to use my hands again. I will try. I just want a chance. Because once your central nervous system is shot, like, you don't get those nerves back. So any wrong cut or whatever could have gone awry in the surgery, that would have made me a complete quadriplegic from the neck down. All I wanted was a chance.
Yeah, to do the work.
I just wanted to do the work. Fast forward when I was in the work, and then even got beyond the work, when my physical disability that was very, very visible became invisible. And I was sitting with the pain. Like, I have been in pain for 2.5 years. I'm sitting here right now. I can tell you everywhere in my body that's inflamed and hurting right now. And in this moment, I'm like, damn, I wonder if it would have been better if I was a quadriplegic, like a complete quadriplegic, that I would actually give up mobility in order to not be in pain. And I thought that I was nuts for thinking that, because of what everyone tells you. At least you can walk, at least you look fine. Like, these are good things. And then my doctor, who, I mean, I've been in this journey with him for many, many years, before diagnosis and after. And he knows now I can actually get that, like, patient-centered care. And he's like, I'm literally going to photocopy a peer-reviewed medical article for her right now, because that's the level of information I want. And had his medical assistant copy out this article that just came out, that is written for doctors, right, about the experiences of people with spinal cord injury and their relationship to pain. And the first couple of paragraphs, I'm just reading all this data about how 50% to like the 75%, big majorities of people also would give up mobility in order to not be in pain. And I cried.
No.
There was a huge release because I felt normal. I felt like the way I was thinking about it, maybe it actually made sense. Maybe, like, my thinking around it isn't wild. And I think that kind of links back to what you were talking about, being in the thyroid group.
Yeah. I mean, that study is so important because I and the realization from that is so important, because I also had a similar situation where I was reading some of the peer-reviewed studies about how thyroid cancer is treated. And there's new data and information now that says that they probably wouldn't recommend total thyroidectomy for even a case like mine. And to think that something could have been done differently, like, that floored me. and I shared, there were moments over the years where I shared with family and friends that if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have elected to have it even removed. And they're like, how could you think of such a thing? That's wild, that's crazy, this is terrible. And I felt like this is wild, crazy thinking. Like, why would we ever opt for something like this? Why would you want to be, in a wheelchair or confined in some way without mobility? Why would I want to live with cancer in my body? And so I felt bad for a long time for even thinking that way. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I've completely lost it, but it never left my mind. And I was like, no, that's exactly what I would do. Like, if I had a chance, like, that is exactly what I would do. And so when I found this group and I've spoken to others, I realized it wasn't that crazy to think about it that way, because other people were feeling the same way. They would have made a different choice. And they actually feel like with the quality of life that they're living now is so drastically different and painful that the other option seems better. But there's no way to ever know that for sure, right? Because the other option could have invited a whole different set of problems in and of itself.
Exactly.
And my conclusion, or where I'm kind of stirring around with it in my head, is that there's no good answer to this at all. I think we did the best that we could with the information that we had at that time. What more can I, and I still struggle with that. I have to remind myself and literally say those words to myself of, I made the best decision at the time with the information that I had, and that I know I personally researched and went out for and did and learned. Things changed. And that's the cards that I was dealt, you were dealt. And so I think it would have required strength, and it would be a struggle with either decision in the end.
The mantras we tell ourselves to just kind of make it through,
Yeah.
and the frequency in which we have to have these conversations with ourselves. It matters to know that there are other people who are also going through that.
It matters, but it's like, okay, I don't know. I go through a whole list of conversations with myself every morning, like, and I've gotten so good at it. I don't even realize I'm having these conversations with myself before I even get out of bed.
Okay, so I want to hear what these conversations are, because I also have conversations before I get out of bed, and I'm curious what yours are.
Oh man, one is like I'll open my eyes, and it's like this, instantly go into a full body scan, like mental full body scan, top to bottom of, okay, how does my legs feel today? How does my back feel today? Like, and I'll move, obviously I'm starting to move. I'm like, all right, Julia, how you feel? What's today gonna be like? It's like, okay, it's this assessment. What's hurting? How you feeling? What's today gonna be like? And I'll say, okay, no matter what, Juliette, you're gonna have to make this as best of a day as possible. What do you need? And I'm talking to myself, what do I need today? Then I'll get up and I'll be in pain. I'm creaking, I'm like balled up. Like, it's like I have to unravel myself, and like just struggling. And then I'm just saying, okay, no, you're gonna be okay. And in my head, as I'm preparing myself for the day, I'm thinking, okay, where in the day do I either need to take a break? Where in the day is there something that I can reschedule or cancel? Because I know that at some point, and this is if I'm not having a great morning, I know at some point I won't be able to make it through the whole day. So in my head, I'm calculating, okay, what will this day look like? And just scheduling it. What do I need to eat? Is there something that I know that's going to help give me energy? What do I not need to eat? It's all of these conversations, but it always ends, or my mantra is, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Today's one day, tomorrow will be better, but you're going to be okay.
I want to cry so hard because I have the same conversations. But what's different that's making me emotional right now is I don't tell myself that I'm going to be okay. I don't know if I speak to myself or treat myself that way. The way I described it, was like I was just in this pit. And I tried to get out of this pit a couple of times. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to stay here. The pit's not that bad. I'm just going to be some bitter bitch and mad at the world. And
comfortable in your pit.
Yeah, I was like finding comfort in my pit, in my bitterness, in my despair. I've already prepared myself to die, so whatever. That was me for a really long time. What my morning conversations look like, same thing. I do the body scan and I do these little tests with myself. Do you know where your feet are? Because I have so much numbness everywhere. Okay, do you know where your feet are? Can you tell if your foot is under the sheet or over the sheet? And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm not. There are times where my feet are crossed and I'm trying to move the foot that's under and I can't move the foot. And so I have this freak out moment of like, oh my gosh, I lost my leg. Why can't I move it? And it's because my other foot's on top and I don't have a sense of that yet. So it's like, okay, what hurts? What do I have to do today? And I'm just like, I should do yoga. I don't feel like doing yoga. I should stretch. Like, here are all these things that I could make myself feel better. I'm like, it's going to be a struggle. I'm not going to do it as well as I used to. I'm in so much pain. Then I pulled the calendar up, same thing. What do I have today? What can I cancel? If I'm already not feeling good.
Then it goes into, okay, what do you need to do to make it through that?
Exactly. And so I start running through all the things that I can say to create boundaries for myself, especially now in this like inside times. I'm already trying to perform, right? Like I'm trying to ignore the pain and I don't want that. I don't want the visual pressure of that. And so sometimes I won't do the video so I can just be sitting in a bra, because when things touch my body, it makes me uncomfortable. And like, how can I make myself comfortable? So like, as soon as I roll out of bed, before I even go to the bathroom, I take my nerve medication.
I know, but I strategically do the same thing because I have to take my medication before I get out of bed. And so everything's perfect. It's like timed, right?
Yes.
So you try to like, okay, we're dependent on that medicine so much. Like you have to, when it's about to kick in, or you anticipate it kicking in so that we can function. You know? Nothing happens until I start to feel something kick in. Yeah, same. I literally get up 2 hours earlier than I have to because it takes me a full hour just to get out of the bed, like nowhere, like just get my bearings, and that's what I know. It takes an hour for the medication to kick it. It takes about that time, and you got to give yourself a little bit more than the 20 minutes maybe before
this is the story of my life. This is
because then like give it an hour and like, okay, the meds are gonna kick in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the story of my life. Like, and I would love to chat about this with you too, but I still have most of my clothes that I had before my surgery. Even though I've gained 40 pounds. 40 pounds, that's a 4 and a 0. So a lot of my time getting ready is just my mental and emotional relationship with my body and clothing, trying to figure out what still fits me. Should I try to lose the weight? Is it possible? But losing weight and exercise hurts my body. That's already hurting as soon as I wake up anyway. I don't know, like, how has your thyroid cancer experience physically changed your body? Like, who you were before your surgery and then after?
Oh gosh, it's This is a completely new body and person. It's so different. And I'm still learning to love this body. I feel like there's some days I'm okay with her. And there are other days I'm like, oh, because I flash back and I think back and I hold on to so much of who I was before my diagnosis. And who I was before my diagnosis was a very active woman who was studying to be a personal trainer, always in the gym, love weight training, love running. I would run about 4 days a week, and weight train in between or after, and all, so about for 6 days a week, I was in the gym doing something active. Did, I love to dance, did ballroom dancing for a while, but I was this person who had this like seemingly endless energy because I was still working 50 hours a week, if not more at times. And I still found the time to go to the gym and do all these things and go out to parties and clubs and hang out with my friends. And almost overnight that ended. And within a month after my surgery, I had already gained, it was about 6 weeks after my surgery, I had already gained 10 pounds. And I was the person that I was before is like, I understood my body so well. I had this wonderful relationship with my body. I was one of those people that like, if I gained 2 pounds, I knew I gained 2 pounds, or if I lost 2 pounds, I felt it and I knew exactly what I needed to do to, regulate myself. And it wasn't like I was always on a scale. It was just an intuition of relationship that I had with my body. Once I gained those 10 pounds, by the way, before I went into surgery, I cranked out like 200 sit-ups and push-ups. Like I was like, I'm gonna go in, I'm going hard. I did the best workout the night before. And
you're wild. I was eating pasta.
I probably should have done that too, right? I could have at least enjoyed, enjoyed myself. Instead, I was torturing myself with a workout, right? But that's what I was doing. That was who I was. And then like 6 weeks later, I hit a wall. I gained 10 pounds. What? How is that? Like, that's not me. Like, and then it was like panic. There's nothing and I couldn't work out. I physically couldn't do it. My brain wasn't working. My body's doing this whole, I don't know what the hell is going on. And so within just a few months afterwards, I had gained almost 30 pounds shortly after. And I still don't understand my body. I don't know what's happening. I was going out, I was trying to work out again, but it wasn't working. I adjusted my diet, it wasn't working. And my weight was starting to, I was at a loss. And so to make a long story short, it took a while for me to get on the right medication. And that's the other problem with thyroid cancer. They don't know how to treat it very well.
Yeah.
But after a lot of fighting, I kind of got into a medication regimen that helped somewhat. It didn't fix everything at all, but I was able to dial the weight back a little bit. So I'm still about 20 pounds heavier than I was before my surgery. And it just seems like no matter what I do, it doesn't want to go away. And so if you imagine like a person is working out 6 days a week, now just for me to go for a freaking walk, it's just like, let me calculate this. Like, okay, I took my medication at such and such a time, which means that it has a half-life of X number of hours. And so therefore, if I go for this walk and I exert this amount of energy, I'm going to burn through that's left over, and I won't have enough energy for what I need to do for the evening, because I want to hang out with my friends and actually be like a nice person to hang out with. So, and those are the calculations that I have in my head. So like, I don't, that's life now.
Yeah. And you're 8 years out of your diagnosis.
I am. I still haven't figured it out. So I don't know if there's an answer to it.
Because I'm still not in the acceptance mode. having to do the calculation of like how my body feels and just being able to like get up and go. Like the get up and go is not part of my life anymore. And I wonder if any of that processing, if that can go quicker if you just accept it right away. But maybe that's just ways that I try to find to like beat myself up of like, girl, don't fight it. This is your situation, just deal with it. But I spend so much time trying to like, there's a whole period of time where you have to come to terms with it before you can even do it properly, I think. I don't know.
How do you come to terms? Like, I struggle with the same question, like that question all the time. Like, what does coming to terms with this mean and look like for me? There are some days I'm like, yeah, this is my life. This is who I am. And there's other days where I completely in my head forget that I even have an illness and that I require medication. And then that's when I fall flat on my face usually. But it's like, I don't know how to come to terms with it. I don't know if I want to come to terms with it.
That's the thing. I don't want to accept it.
Yeah, I don't want to always accept it because then it means that I have to let go of who I was before. And I loved her.
Yeah, she was dope. I don't know who you were before, but before this, I was amazing.
I'm sure I know you were amazing and you still are, but it's like in our heads, we're like, no, that was like if I had known that was going to be like my peak, I think I would have done things a little differently.
I would have enjoyed it more. I would have tried to find a husband during that time.
Exactly.
Because now like, okay, so I'm curious for you, because you and I had different kind of how our lives shifted after diagnosis, where I lost a lot of my friendships in Seattle, like most of them. And so the people that I know now, and this is like 2 years ago for me, I have almost nobody in my life right now who knew me before my surgery. Almost no one. So most people I know the after surgery Jodi-Ann, which mentally freed me to try to get out of the comparisons, even though I'm still in it, but at least I don't have to look at other people who are making that comparison. And so this impacted my social world more than my professional life. Professionally, like my whole office showed the hell up for me. Like I had such a positive work experience and I had a really, really negative social experience.
It's just so sad that breaks my heart that people who in your social life who you call friends, who position themselves as friends in your life, didn't come through for you. That hurts me a lot. You know that.
I think that is what kind of triggered a depression that made me feel, real talk, like very suicidal for a long time. Because I felt like a pariah. I felt like I survived my surgery for nothing because people couldn't love me, couldn't love somebody who needed so much. And it's hard when you're like a strong Black woman and you're like the strong one who shows up in your relationships and, oh, the strong person needs something.
As much as you thought they were your friends, they clearly weren't. And it took that to see it and make room for more meaningful relationships that will carry you through this next phase of your life.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And that is also the work, right? Of needing to quote unquote come to terms and like, what does that look like? And what is rebuilding? One, for me, at least coming to terms with the fact that I need a social circle. Cause for a long time I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna just be out here. I will say, Juliette, like when you and I first connected, and I want to talk about how I learned about your thyroid cancer, that actually turned on for me that I can create new relationships. Mm-hmm. You trusting me with what happened to you and like opening that up made me feel like, oh, okay, I can make friends again. And so I want to talk about like what happened. Look at you crying. You better stop. look at us on the Zoom. What this these Kleenexes like?
Lord, Jodi-Ann.
Here's what I want to confront you on this podcast.
Do it.
Okay. I was suffering. And then the other side of me was very public. I had a platform. I was talking about my own cancer experience, integrating it with race, you know, being like very vocal about the intersectionalities of race and disability and gender and my story, right? And you watched me. And it took a year of us knowing each other that you sat and you were like, girl, I had thyroid cancer. I think you said you and I have more in common than you think.
I did say that. Yeah. I did say that. Can I tell you, while I was in the audience watching you talk about this, I was sitting there stunned by you. And what you didn't see was my own tears in that moment while I was sitting in the audience, because I was in awe of you. I've been courageous in so many other areas of my life. Like, I have done things that people like label me as being crazy in doing. You know, heck, I try to live my life in this fearless way, and it's been a mantra for myself for years now. Being courageous, being fearless, facing everything. And for years, I didn't talk about my diagnosis openly. I had a really ugly experience in the workplace when I shared what I was going through. My workplace was not as warm as yours. It was actually very toxic and created a lot of trauma for me. I was struggling a lot. I learned to just bury it all. Like, you look normal, so act normal. Don't talk about, just be. You know, nobody has to know what happens in your apartment when you're alone, you know, and how you're feeling. And I will never tell, like, I'll excuse myself from situations and just say, hey, I got something I gotta do, or whatever, you know, I never say, hey, listen, I'm having a flare up, I really need to go home and just rest a little bit or something. You know, I never said that. But watching you on that stage, I said, oh shit, damn. She is powerful. And I know you didn't necessarily feel that way, but you radiated in a way that touched me, but also scared me. I wasn't in a place, I didn't know how to have that conversation. I didn't know, and like, it goes back to, like, even though you had this experience, like, this is your life, my mindset is, don't talk about it because people don't understand. Don't talk about, you know, like, don't be that thing. Don't be the person with cancer. But you struck me. I got emotional in that, and I was so proud of you. And I actually felt like shit, to tell you the truth. I was like, oh man, like, I don't know how to do this. I don't, like, how do I do that? Like, how does she do it? How did she find her voice? And I couldn't answer it. Like, I didn't know how you found your voice. I didn't know how to find my own voice in this. And it took that long. And I wanted to, I think even in between all of that, I still extended myself in a way, like, okay, you're a friend, you're not alone, but I never shared my own.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you kicking my ass for that later. Because I needed it. And I forget what actually transpired that actually made me share that with you. I don't know what triggered it. I think I just felt, I probably was in just a place of, okay, I know her, I like her, we need each other. And this is stupid, Juliette. Like, we need each other here. Like, I need her, and I know she needs someone too, you know, and hell, I'm in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
Like, how disingenuous is that? And lack of integrity. And so that was also playing around in my head because I never even talk about that as part of my identity. So I was just committing to myself to do better and to be better and to be courageous in this space, to find that next thing that brought me fear and facing it. And so I'm so thankful for you for being that person at that time. And now to pull me, like, help me through that. And you helped me a lot more than you even realize. I mean, girl, like for the first time, I actually shared with my job that I have a chronic illness and I identify as a person with a non-visible disability. Like I put that out there. I was like,
in the world.
That's scary.
How did that go?
Nobody said anything. Like,
girl, we all got chronic illnesses.
Nobody said anything at all. It's like, it just passed up. I think I made a joke about, okay, now I could check off 3 of your diversity boxes.
Yep.
Black woman, person with a disability. So, but that was a lot. That was like a big deal. I wrote it, I erased it. I wrote it, I erased it. And I committed myself to doing better to it. And so you taught me that. So thank you. I actually feel a lot better once I announced, like when I started to talk about it, like at work, and oh, this feels better. Like I'm not hiding something all the time. But yeah, I don't know if there's a better answer to why I didn't connect with you on this for nearly a year. And I feel bad because I know now I know how much you were going through. And I'm sorry that I didn't see it. I didn't know how to do it. And it was like I was in my own self-preservation mode. And that's what it felt like. It's like it just trained self-preservation mode all the time.
But it's interesting because after you told me what happened to you, and I'd love to get the details on the record of that, I got it. I totally got it. It's not like I'm holding it against you, but it was also important for me to chat with you about, because I just kept thinking of what could have this last year looked like if you had Juliette. Because I see myself in you so much. Caribbean girl from New York City, out here in Seattle.
On our own,
single, suffering through a sea of whiteness, doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work.
Yeah.
Having had this experience, having had an invisible disability, trying to navigate the fact that you know that your body can create cancer. And then at least socially, because I felt like such a pariah, I was like, nobody, then you get all like absolutist, nobody's going through this, it's just me. Ah! And I was like, no, this person, you were a personal trainer. I was also a personal trainer. Like,
yes, we have that in common. We have so much in common. Parallel with each other. Oh my God.
And I was like, shit, it's someone else, not just someone else, but someone who's like ticking all these boxes of similar life experiences. And I just like, oh my God, that was lost time. But I was probably also in a place of resisting that. Because like when we met, and there were times when you had reached out to me and I was feeling so worthless that I was like, why does she want to spend time with me? Everyone that I know, I just know professionally, nobody wants to spend time with me because I need too much. And then if people do want to spend time with me, it's because they're trying to leverage something from me professionally. And so when you would reach out to just kind of kick it, I was like, I don't know what she wants. And I feel resistant in like wanting to spend time with people. And it was hard for me to even be fully present in a friendship or whatever was going on with you, because I just felt so isolated. And then the only place that I could be myself was in this professional realm, because in my experience, that was the safe space.
And that's the one place that we had like.
Yes. And so can you tell folks what happened to you when you were going back to work?
When I got cleared to go back to work, I actually had begged my doctor. I told him I wasn't ready, and I kept trying to extend it because I wasn't feeling great at all. Like, and saying I wasn't feeling great is an understatement. I thought I was dying. I literally thought I was dying. I would, like, things go through my head, like, oh, I'm gonna create my will. Like, if I die now, what would they find in my apartment? That would be embarrassing. um,
Yep.
let me get rid of those things, and so my head is like, but this is how I honestly felt like I wasn't going to live. But I had to go back to work because I had to pay for that apartment that I'm feeling like I'm about to, like, that's going to be my last moment in this apartment. So I have to pay for this place. Where else am I going to suffer? So I went back to work, and this is a job that required, like, high demanding type of a role. You're always on, people are always looking for you, putting in a lot of hours. It's a lot of attention to detail too. And I remember sitting at my desk. There's one moment one day where I was on a call and the conversation turned to me and I couldn't speak. Like, I started stuttering, and I stuttered so bad, like I thought I was having a stroke. And like, I just couldn't get anything out. My brain wasn't working. I was so tired. I was crying at my desk, and I wasn't functioning anymore. I couldn't think. And I was just standing there, sitting there, just looking at my computer, looking at all these papers, and it was just all blurry, all blur. And I thought, oh God, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And when I had came back in, nobody really asked me how I was doing. I came back, I was always wearing scarves around my neck because I still had, my scar was healing. And I didn't want to just walk around, with this patch on my neck. Instead, what somebody told me, like, in a really, like, ugly tone, was, why do you keep wearing these scarves around your neck? And I'm like, well, I was out. I had surgery. I was sick. I was out sick. And that person didn't respond to me. They didn't say anything. And they just kind of walked away. And I went into my manager's office. Like, I got called into my manager's office for something. And she said, I was already trying to get through this pile of work, things that I needed to do. And she's like, hey, I need you to take this project on. And I said, no, I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't do it. I already have these things that I'm working on. I'm still recovering. I can't take on this next project. And her face changed and she got upset. She's like, what do you mean? Like, I literally just got out of the hospital, just got cleared. I have to pace myself in my recovery. I can't put in 60 hours a week, to do this. And she ended up writing an email to our, like, higher up and to the rest of the management team about what I said. And that spiraled after that, because next thing I know, I was being asked to provide my medical records. They called in the office psychologist.
Oh my God.
To assess me, and I refused to talk to her. I was like, this is a trap.
Yep.
They kept handing me papers to give to my doctor to fill out, and I must have given my doctor it was so much that my doctor got fed up and said she will not write one more, she won't do it anymore. She's like, because it's like by the 10th request, it's like, what else do you want? Like, I'm telling you what her condition is. I'm saying that she needs to ease back into her work. And it was over and over and over again. And then I sat down, and then we had another meeting with my manager, and she's like, well, how do you know your doctor?
Whoa. Okay.
Then it went into, can you give me your doctor's information? I'd like to talk to her. And they wanted to set up a meeting with my doctor. I was like, that's a clear violation, like clear violation. And so this went on for a while. Every time walking into that space, like, they were making me out to be a liar. Like, oh, she must be faking it. She's not up to doing the job, or et cetera, et cetera. You know, so this is like what was percolating, the undercurrent that was percolating about me. It hurt a lot.
I'm so disgusted.
It hurt a lot. And it went back, it was just, and you know, you walk into a meeting, it's like, let me guess, you're not going to do it, are you? You're not going to.
Jesus.
Oh, you can't stay an extra hour? No. Oh, of course not. Yeah, right. Or another coworker saying to me, it's so hard to like even recall all of these things, but you know, my coworker turning to me one day and saying, well, you're fine now, aren't you? So I don't understand what the problem is. Like, that happened like 3 months ago. And then when summer finally hit and I was still wearing the scarf, that was a whole nother level of that was like, oh, there's like, what it like having to explain why I'm wearing the scarf, you know, and why are you even asking? Like, what is your business? If I want to wear a scarf during the summer, let me wear my scarf during the summer.
Why is this bothering you so much?
But it got to a point where it felt it was hostile.
Yeah.
It was, and as devastating as I'm trying to figure out, like I'm feeling, I wake up every morning feeling like death is upon me.
Yeah.
And I have to find a way to get into the office and try to look pleasant because, you know, hey, a Black woman in the office who's not smiling is
okay.
a whole nother, you know, issue. Like, oh, she's angry, she has an attitude problem. And somebody actually did say that I had an attitude problem. And so trying to navigate that negativity and toxicity and the hostility while also trying to reconcile the trauma that I just physically had, and that I'm still trying to survive from. My doctor finally said to me, she's like, you're not getting better. I wasn't healing. And that's why I kept this scarf on. I was not actually healing. And she's like, you're under too much stress. You are not going to heal. You're not going to get better. We keep putting you in all these different medications and nothing's happening. The stress is what's the problem here. I realized, holy shit, I'm not going to survive. Like, this job is trying to kill me.
Yep.
And I woke up one morning. It's like I heard a pin drop and I had this utter clarity, beautiful clarity. Like, I've never experienced a moment like that before since then. But it was like everything slowed down. The light was shining through in my window and I could see like the little dust particles and everything was like in slow motion. It's beautiful slow motion. It was quiet. And I was so much at peace. And it's like I heard this voice that said, you know what to do. This isn't that hard. You're making it harder than it is. You know what to do. I walked into the office that morning and I handed my resignation. And I'm done. I gave them 2 weeks notice, nothing more. And I didn't have a new job lined up. I don't know what the hell I was gonna do. All I knew was that this could not be it because it was killing me. And they were shocked. They're like, what? I did, like, how dare you? Like, how dare I quit? Like, no, we're here to make you suffer, Juliette. Don't go quitting on us. And
I had plans for you today.
And so that's what happened. I quit, and it was the best decision I made for myself to this day. And if I didn't listen to that intuition, I don't know what would have happened to me. I would have suffered even more. I even thought about bringing a lawsuit against them for, like that idea of just asking me for my doctor to talk to my doctor and all of this. It was just a shitty time. And so I walked away with that, like, professionally, I cannot engage in this conversation. They will not understand. And so in my professional space, that was void of my identity. And in my social space, more people knew about, what was going on with me. But even then, that was an uncomfortable space for me to be in. It always is. So that's where we kind of that's where we differed. My professional space was just like, it was ugly. It was ugly.
And it's not until recently when I started to expand my own DI practice around disability rights as well, where I started learning more about accommodation hostility and how accommodation hostility even shows up in the workplace. And what I love about your story is the fact that you're like, I'm not doing this anymore, and had nothing lined up. And I'm like, girl, you can't be unemployed. You need health insurance. Like that's why we're in this situation in the first place. How you gonna get the medications? Like,
it was after I left the building that I realized I had an oh shit moment. I was like, ooh.
How you gonna get them pills, girl? That is, I think when you trust yourself and you have to know no more, you hold the line. I'm not doing this. And you figure it out.
You know what, Jodi-Ann? It's like, yeah, health insurance. I realized like if I had an oh crap moment, like, oh my God, I need health insurance. But even beyond that, there was a much higher voice and thing happening that was so much bigger than me. Like my pure survival instinct kicked in. And I bet on myself. That's when I learned to start betting on myself. Like, hey, you need to survive. This is what you have to do. And guess what? You're smart. You're educated. You have a great job. No one's goddamn fool.
Nope.
You'll be fine. You'll be okay. Like we're gonna figure this out some way or another.
Yeah. I think what that switch for me happened really, really early in my rehabilitation process. I literally was like running through the hallways of Sloan Kettering in my little Patagonia onesie.
Oh, that's another like have in common. Sloan Kettering.
Yes. Yo, shout out to Sloan. I love that place, and their cafeteria is dope.
It is. It's true.
I've never been excited about hospital food. And this is how I knew, like, this is why I had to do my surgery in New York and not in Seattle. They had cornmeal porridge for breakfast. Bro, you got my cultural food in the cafeteria? Yes, and it wouldn't be on the menu for patients, but I knew that cornmeal porridge, I knew it was in the cafeteria. So when I would call for breakfast, I was like, yo, I need you to send me up. Yes, I was like, I need you to send me up some cornmeal porridge.
Leave it to you to find the secret menu. You know what? You were bold. You're bold now. You were bold then.
Back to my point. This is what happened for me. 3 weeks before my surgery, I was snowboarding in the Alps. Fast forward, I wake up from surgery. A couple days after surgery, the catheter comes out. You know, they expect you to move around and walk and stuff. And they put me at the bottom of a staircase. And I'm like, yo, I'm at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and you have me in a stairwell. I'm supposed to be on some like fancy equipment, you know, like this is what I'm thinking my rehabilitation process is going to be.
This feels too basic.
Yeah. I was like, yo, you took me to this stairwell with no windows. Like it's not even designed, right? It's like the back stairwell that like nobody's supposed to use. And she's like, yeah, just walk up the stairs. And I was like, ugh. And I put my hand on the railing and I just stood there. I literally could not walk upstairs because my brain is like, cool, stairs, we do this all the time. And my body is not getting the signal. And I stood there and I cried. Of course. And like, it took me a couple days to like walk up the stairs. And even in me walking was not a normal way of like walking, like where you switch feet, you know, I was still doing like the way little kids walk upstairs with like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. That's how I was getting up the stairs. Like I couldn't just like one foot and
feet up.
Yeah. And so I was in this mode of like, I'm tired of overcoming. I'm tired of having to swallow pain and just get it done. I'm tired of ignoring what is physically happening because I'm supposed to do this task. I'm tired of it. And it's layered with this, like, being a Black woman, needing to be strong, needing to just kind of suffer in silence while you bring yourself up, bring your family up, bring your community up, bring like the whole race up, all the ancestors up. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to swallow this, right? Because the stress of swallowing it is what kind of what you were experiencing. Like, that creates stress in your body, which is not going to help me. That psychological, emotional, mental stress
It's
also
true.
has a physiological
It
manifestation.
eats away at you. It
Exactly.
creates other illnesses.
Exactly. And I was like, I'm not swallowing this. So from the very beginning, even though I was deeply, deeply suffering to suicidal depression, I was like, I'm telling everybody. And that was just kind of like my way of trying to dispel this strong Black superwoman myth.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I was still performing it because you saw me as radiating this thing, even though after I left that thing, I went home and cried.
I think there's always going to be a degree of performance. I wonder. I think because we've both become so good at performing.
Yeah. And that scares me
Exactly. Exactly.
that you can't see it.
Well, it becomes cyclical at
Yeah.
the same time. Like we're starting. That's a tough one. It's like I almost feel like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I don't know.
you put yourself and your health, yourself first by owning it and not burying it far sooner than I was obviously ever able to do it. And the impact of that was detrimental too for me in other ways. And so I listened to you. I'm like, wow, and that's where I say you have this beautiful, authentic courage. Your survival instinct kicked in way before mine did, and it's like, okay, what is it for me, I was like, no, I need to pretend. I need to, you know,
But that's also your survival instinct.
it's a different kind of survival.
That's how you survived it. And I think that's what is so interesting, like when you actually get to spend time and talk to people about their stories. And what inspired me to even think about this podcast is people are surviving in different ways. And I've spent too much time trying to think, could I have done these past 2.5 years differently? Did I survive wrong?
And isn't that a weird thing to say? Is there a right way to survive?
Yeah.
Other than just to survive, right? I don't know. There isn't a right way to survive. I think we do, again, the best with what we know to do in that space and time that we're experiencing it,
Yeah.
and then when you feel or know something different, then we do different. And that's what I meant. You showed me something different because before you, I've never met anybody else a Black woman in a professional space. I can honestly tell I have never met a Black woman in a professional space who had a disability or a chronic, who was going through this type of event in their life and was open about it. I can't think of one. And that's what I mean. Like when I saw you, it triggered something for me, like, oh, maybe it is possible. But how do I do it? And I had to navigate myself through all of this stuff. Never mind all the other stuff that was happening in my life, But yeah, that workplace situation was just, toxicity is an understatement. And it's like, how could people be so cold? That's what I can't understand. Like, how could people be so goddamn cold and mean? Like, I was walking into a mean girl situation like every day for like over a year after my surgery. The amount of effort it took for me to get into that office was astronomical at times. Like my boyfriend at the time would carry my bag for me. We would take the train into the office, and I didn't even have the strength to carry my bag. And where we lived, we had to go up the stairs to get it to the train, to the 7. And I remember, and when you talked about the stair story, it triggered for me also, because I won't ever forget one day standing in front of that stairwell, at that stair, stop, put my hand on the railing, and bawled because I couldn't get up the stairs. Not that I couldn't physically, I didn't have enough energy to even get up the goddamn stairs. And it took forever. It felt like forever. And bless his heart, he was incredibly patient with me. But can you imagine we would have gotten to a point in our lives where stairs, it's like a big, like a challenge for, you know?
I wasn't expecting that until like maybe my 80s or something,
Right. Like, so what I've learned now, like, I don't know if you do this as well, but I know I've come across, like, if I'm going up stairs or going downstairs and there's like an elderly person or somebody in front of me who's going super slow, I secretly cheer them on and try to give them like some encouragement. And I understand, like, I have a whole new level of understanding and appreciation. I'm like, okay, yes, mommy, you can do it. You can do it. You got it. Just take your time. Take your time.
One foot at a time, girl. You got this.
Or I'll actually slow down enough behind them to keep people away. I've done that. You know what I mean? Like, just keep that pace, because people get frustrated. So if this person ahead of me and me are going slow, then that slows everybody else down. And you're just going to have to deal with it,
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a shift it's a shift, but I can't believe how mean people can be. And that's what took away from it. Yeah. The work situation was just, I was a number. I wasn't even a person. I was just a body to do stuff, yeah. Just to have that experience, like, nobody asking how you're feeling. What do you need? I never got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling now? I know you started a new job recently. You had your first like public professional disclosure around, having chronic illness. How are you approaching work, having had that trauma and trying to come to terms with different ways of being?
It's a battle, because you and I, we're in roles that require us to be like on point at all times. There's not a whole lot of leeway in the types of conversations that we have and the types of content that we're leading. We're forever challenged in different ways, right? And so, but what I started to do was, one, give myself permission to take a break. And so I literally schedule it in. It's on my calendar. So I'll block the first part of, like, the first half hour to hour of my day. This is where it's just me going through emails. I'm not engaged. It's just a low build up into my day. And somewhere during the day, I'll take at least half an hour to just literally just do this.
Just lay back, put your head back.
Just do this. Yeah. And I need that. I absolutely need that. It's very easy, and it's very easy in the pace of work that I'm in, to just keep going. I might feel proud of at the end of the day that I managed to go through it, but I know I'm going to pay for it somewhere else. And so therefore, I have to take that half an hour break at minimum, just to close my eyes and give myself permission to do that. And especially now in our virtual environment, we work more hours, and meetings become more like we're back to back more. We start earlier, we end later. So that break is far more critical to invest in than it has been before.
Yeah.
That's the way I manage it at this point. And then I gauge myself. Like I said, like in the morning, I think about, okay, what are the things that I need to, be forgiving of myself of, if I were to push this back another day or reprioritize my day in a different way, so I just have to be flexible with the way I see my days going.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone who's trying to consider how or whether to disclose at work, right? So a quick things like I had a really incredibly positive work experience around my process and disclosure and coming back. Like when I found out about my diagnosis, probably like the third call that I made was to the president of my organization. She talked to me for like 45 minutes, and I did not go back to work from that conversation for 4 months. They're just like, we'll figure it out, do what you have to do. But interestingly, 5 days after I got diagnosed, I started an interview process with Amazon. And like I found out 5 days later, then I'm meeting with the hiring manager for coffee. And it was probably the first and only hour that I had in that time where I didn't talk about my cancer stuff. And I cried the entire way to the coffee shop, and I cried the entire way home. When I got the call that I didn't get the job at Amazon, I was sitting in a wheelchair, hooked up to a catheter in my hospital room.
Oh my gosh.
And I cried, and I was like, I also have other things to do today, so it's okay, you know? And then fast forward, because I like had to, even though my work situation was so great, I couldn't be in my life anymore. And so I sat with myself and I said, okay, here are your options. Exit life or exit this life. Meaning get a new job, just be in different spaces. I got a dog. Like I just created a different version of my life. And I was like, I'm going to try this for a year. And if this doesn't go out well, then I'll just, take the other option. Like that's literally was my agreement with myself. I'm just going to try this new life for a year. And then I interviewed at Zillow, and I spent the entire evening before, mind you, it's for like a diversity and inclusion role. And so like you said, like I'm a Black woman with a disability, like I should proudly go in there with my cane and be like, yo, I'm checking boxes for you. And then I know how people treat folks who have disabilities. And what is that snap judgment that you make? Because there's also this like bias towards just because someone has a physical disability, then they're not intelligent, right? And so I'm trying to mitigate disability bias. I'm trying to mitigate bias against Black people, natural hair, So I spent the whole time trying to find clothes. I bought new shoes because I didn't know what they would do with me that day. And I didn't want to use a cane. So I didn't bring my cane, which I needed. And I didn't want to show that I limped. And so instead of preparing my actual content, I was trying to figure out how to perform ableness.
Wow. Performing able.
And I was like, yo, I'm struggling. And I was like, please don't let them say, do you want a campus tour? Because I do not. Right. And so like, I was really struggling with like how to navigate, like leave my cocoon of this like perfect work experience that I had, trying to branch out into a different world and how to fit disability in that. And then ultimately the job that I did get, I was like, I don't give a fuck. I brought that cane. I was in that meeting. I was like, listen, I had cancer. They asked me how I managed stress. And I was like, so I thought I was going to die last year. There's nothing that would happen in this job that would be more stressful than that.
Oh my God. It changes perspective on everything. And it's so true. Like it's stress. Like you've reached a whole nother level of like, you think you're going to die.
Yeah.
Everything else is like, that's not even an issue anymore.
I was like, I said, nothing here would even register on the scale of stress. And so it was so interesting to go from like, how can I hide this? To this is the only thing I'm going to talk about in this interview, right? I'm actually going to leverage my experience as a reason why you should hire me. And so I'm curious for you, like, because you had, your own work engagement and professional like traumas with this, and you've transitioned roles, since then, what advice would you give for someone listening, again, like who's trying to navigate work and cancer and all of that?
Advice. Well, before I get into advice, I just want to say that I had an experience in the workplace where I was on a team. I call them a really highly emotional team.
Mhm.
Like I never worked at a place where everybody cried more than they did. And here I come. One, I'm a New Yorker. Two, I just survived cancer and feeling like I was gonna die. And so everything that was triggering for people in this team, like really dramatic moments, I would literally sit there in a meeting. I'm like no reaction coming out of me forever. I couldn't do it. I was like, why are you why is this so dramatic? Like, why are you crying? Like, it's not that serious.
Yeah.
Nothing was serious for me, or reach that level of emotional criticalness. And I honestly told my team, I was like, I do not have the emotional capacity for all this stuff. Like this is not that serious, but it's coming from a place of I know there are things that I will cry over, and this is so not it anymore.
So not it. And they just think you're some angry Black woman, and you're just like, no, I'm a survivor. I've been through actual stress.
It's so true. But it did come across that I didn't want to be a part of this team, or that I was angry. I just couldn't relate to any of this stuff anymore. That's another experience in there. But advice that I would give, gosh, I think for me, given that this is probably one of the first times I've really just shared it with people, own it. I had to own it. And when those words came up on the screen, I owned it. I leaned into it and said, okay, this is me. And my voice didn't quiver. It was just, hey, I identify as a person with an invisible disability. I have for the last 8 years. And I just kind of rolled into it, and I didn't qualify it with anything. It just is. So it didn't leave any room for questions or curiosity, or there wasn't. It just is. There's no debate, there's no questions. This is who I am, period. With my manager, it was with a tone of not necessarily that I manage my illness. I'm not asking you to manage my illness, but I'm telling you I have an illness and this is who I am. I'm owning it. And she was like, hey, whatever you need. And I said, okay, I promise to communicate with you and to be transparent, and that I can commit to. So yeah, owning it, communicating my needs when I need it, and not asking others to manage this illness for me in any way. That's not, being clear about that. But I would say in my previous experience, with that horrible toxic situation, I often think about if there's anything I could have done differently to make that situation go differently. And there isn't.
No, girl.
Sometimes it's cultural to your organization and what they're about, and how people are with each other. I do believe that because I was struggling with it myself, that I also, there's another piece of this. So an email went out to the whole team. That I didn't ask to be sent out when I was coming back into the office. That totally took power away from me and being able to tell my story, where they said, well, Juliette is coming back from medical leave, and Juliette's coming back from medical leave, and she's has a she says she's disabled in a way, or has to undergo a process of re-entering so it just kind of it was a tone that said, oh, poor Juliette is coming back in, and she's gonna need some stuff from it was just really patronizing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't own that story, or how I wanted to talk about my experience, if I even wanted to talk about it. And so it took the power away from me in how I related to my teammates and my managers. And so if there is any other advice, is narrate your own story about this and own that. And I didn't have an opportunity to fully express what was happening with me, and in a way that other people could understand, and hopefully, like, and maybe understanding is too much to ask for, but at least know that there is what was expected, what I expected of them, and what they and how to manage expectations of me as well, and how they were going to work with me, if that makes sense. So yeah. I guess that falls in line with communication, but just owning the narrative of that as well. I would also say, just being mindful of like the audience as well. People say and do shitty things that are often illegal.
Yo, can you say that again? Say that again.
People do and say shitty things that are illegal, blatantly illegal. When we're in our place of our own suffering, the thought of having to engage in that feels like it's too heavy.
Yeah.
But if it is at all possible, make note of it, save your emails, your recordings, keep track of what you can. Because we have laws for a reason, and they apply to us too.
Yes.
We have every right to exercise our rights as people with disabilities, with chronic illness in the workplace. And so I didn't know enough about that then. I knew in my heart, like, this is not right, but I did not have the capacity to follow through. Just be mindful of how your workplace is treating you, and document as much as you can in that moment. So people, a lot of companies do put themselves at risk inadvertently.
And almost on purpose too, because I think particularly as people of color, then taking on this other marginalized identity around disability and needing to advocate for the things that you need again, I think sometimes people might take advantage of, well, maybe she doesn't see herself in this way. Like sometimes you're so busy fighting racism that you forget that you're also a protected class under your disability as well. And that you won't leverage tools and systems, that you'll just take abuse.
You're absolutely right. They're betting on that.
Yeah, exactly.
They're betting on that because usually it's a big corporation or organization that has a hell of a lot of resources than you do, and they know you want the insurance.
Yes.
You need the job. And so that's why they were shocked when I quit without having anything else, because I think they were banking on the fact that I'm going to stick around because I need the darn
that you need it.
Yeah. Talk about slavery.
Hello. What a way to end. So I didn't even welcome you to the podcast, but I will welcome you to Black Cancer. And I will thank you so much, Juliette, for having this conversation with me, for being so open and vulnerable. And with this and outside of this, just being such a partner and role model for me.
Oh, thank you, Jodi-Ann, for having me. Thank you for being a role model for me and inviting me and pushing me out of my comfortable little pit that I was in too. And so you reminded me on how important it is to be connected with others, and that we need each other. Like, we can't do this alone. And it's important to not try to do it alone. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And so I want to end on like something fun for folks, because this podcast is about cancer and it's also about life. Who do you recommend who's someone our listeners should know, something that our listeners should read, and something that our listeners should listen to?
Okay, to be honest, the first thing that comes to my mind, one thing that I wish somebody had told me I wish somebody had reminded me or told me or shown me or expressed to me in some way that I I am far stronger than I believe myself to be. And I want to I know the word strong is kind of loaded for us as Black people and Black women specifically. Um, but I want people to know that there's a depth in us that when you think it's there's just more. There's just more. I wish people would know that there's just so much depth in who we are as humans, and our what we think is our capacity is actually not always our capacity. There's more that,
Yeah.
and for ourselves, not necessarily just for each other, and what we give ourselves. Know that you can bet on yourself. Trust yourself, trust your intuition. Love yourself. Like, I wish I had known to do that earlier and sooner. What should somebody read? Specifically for thyroid cancer patients, Stop the Thyroid Madness was a great book. I almost walked around with it like it was like my Bible, and I'm looking for it on my shelf here and I can't find it.
Is it by Janie A. Bothrop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the very least, it started a conversation or a learning journey for me in how to talk to my doctors, what to not accept from my doctors. And it was like a stepping stone for me to learn more about thyroid cancer, the thyroid, the body, et cetera, but how to do the research around thyroid related issues in general. So I highly recommend that if anybody's facing thyroid cancer. But in that same vein, read whatever you can about your particular diagnosis. And don't just read what the doctors are out there reading. Read things that are authored by other patients.
Yep.
Because oftentimes, like we're discussing here, our experience is far different than what the doctors will ever tell you is happening. They don't research this. They don't understand what happens afterwards sometimes. And it's only until you connect and start to read other publications from other patients will you start to understand how to manage your own care. And in that same vein, connecting with Facebook groups as an example of that and reading some of the things that they post there helps give some perspective on how to manage and learn about your own illness.
Yeah.
Or condition. And so to listen to, I do listen to a lot of music.
What was giving you joy? What's giving you joy right now?
I listen to a lot of what we call Haitian Racine roots music. I'm into Afrobeats. I'm into, but anything that is, because music can also be meditative.
Yeah.
The purpose of the music is to reconnect with self in some way. Music and dance for me is a form of prayer. And I think the message behind that is find your form of prayer and meditation to reconnect back with yourself in some way. And that's just my modality at times is music. And all of that counts. All of it counts when we're facing these, really devastating situations. Yeah.
Yeah. So. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I wish I could give you a hug right now.
I haven't hugged anyone in 6 months.
Oh God. I don't even get me started on that.
I know. We're creating a whole generation of psychopaths. Black Cancer was created, produced, and edited by me, Jodi-Ann. Thank you so much, Juliette Austin, for sharing your story. To make sure that this and other Black cancer stories become center to how we talk about cancer, you can like, subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you find your podcasts. Follow us online at blackcancer.co and on Instagram at _black_cancer. Trauma comes with endless wisdom for ourselves and those around us. Tell someone you know about Black cancer.
I will also say this, Jodi-Ann, include as a part of your mantra that you will be okay. I hope that you get to a place where you can say it and believe it, or say it enough that you start to believe it. Just give it a try. Give it a try and see if it changes for you, or a version of that, because I want you to be okay. I need for you to be okay. I need for you to believe that you will be okay ultimately.
I hear you. I receive it, and it is something that I am actively working on. And I think part of this podcast project is that it's that for me and my own healing, and I hope for other people to know that whatever okay looks like for you, like you can get there.
Absolutely. I didn't define okay. It's just okay, whatever that means for you for that day and in that moment.